Our Across the Aisle segment tonight. President Trump met with Russian leader Vladimir Putin at the G20 summit on Friday. During the meeting, Trump probed Putin about accusations of Russian hacking during the 2016 American election. Yet all we hear from the mainstream media is nonsense about a handshake. Watch.
Already today here in Germany, we have seen the first casual greeting between President Trump and President Putin. This handshake.
The two presidents have now shaken hands for the first time.
There you go.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Let's just take a moment to look. All right.
With me now, professor and author of Obama's America, a transformative vision of our national identity, Ian Reifowitz. Ian, good to see you.
Good to see you again, Liz.
All right, Ian, let's just make sure that we're on the same page at the beginning of this segment. Please, oh please, Ian, as an American liberal, tell me that you think that all this nonsense about Trump shaking hands with Putin and all the behavior analysis and body language analysis is a bunch of bogus, ridiculous absurdity.
Well, I do think that that kind of coverage is overblown. I would say, look, a lot of things happened at the G20 summit. Unfortunately, we saw the U.S. appears to be isolated on trade, on the environment, but we saw some positives. There's a women's empowerment fund. We can give Ivanka Trump some credit for that. And even with the meeting between Putin and Trump, there may be a small positive if it holds. There's a small part of Syria where there's a regional ceasefire. But there is some substance, obviously, also around the Trump-Putin meeting. And I think the real newsworthy aspect is that you had 3 Republican senators angry enough at the discussion between Trump and Putin, especially over cybersecurity, that they really attacked him pretty harshly. You had Lindsey Graham, you had Ben Sassa, you had Marco Rubio, all criticizing Trump over this cybersecurity agreement. And Lindsey Graham was very upset about the way he handled the elections. He said that Trump is apparently the only person left with any doubt that Russia was involved in the election hacking. And I think, at least according to Lindsey Graham, Trump really looked ridiculous. And to paraphrase the studio head from The Godfather, a man in Trump's position cannot afford to be made to look ridiculous. I hope that President Trump is not going to wake up in his bed, with a horse's head like Jack Waltz did in The Godfather. But he's got to watch himself if he's getting that kind of criticism from Republicans.
Right. Well, I guess Lindsey Graham, it could be argued whether or not he's a Republican. But let me put Trump's tweet up on this screen, because I think that's one of the stories. And these are the 3 things that I think liberals pulled out of the meeting between President Trump and President Putin here. The first of all was the handshake. No one can stop talking about the handshake, and it's ridiculous. It means nothing. It's just a handshake. It's a friendly gesture. You don't go into a negotiation and punch someone in the face. I mean, a handshake is the normal, socially acceptable thing to do. The second thing is exactly what you were discussing, the cybersecurity unit. That's what liberals are pulling out of this meeting. But you hear what President Trump says in this tweet, in his following tweet, that just because he discussed that doesn't mean he thinks it is feasible. It's not feasible. And why aren't liberals, why isn't the mainstream media focusing on what was accomplished with someone who can be described as an adversary? I mean, it's not like President Trump was going to walk into that room and Vladimir Putin was going to be like, yes, sir, I hacked your election. I'm sorry, and here's how I did it. That's ridiculous to imagine that would be the case. But he walked out of there after 2 minutes, still on good terms. After 2 hours, I should say, still on good terms, and he had brokered a ceasefire.
Well, I think, if we look at the cybersecurity thing, right after the meeting, President Trump issued a very excited tweet touting the value of this. And then after a bit of ridicule, including from Senator Graham, who was from South Carolina and was just reelected there by a pretty Republican electorate. So we'll leave that to the voters of South Carolina. But after some of that ridicule is when we saw that second tweet where he said, oh, yeah, essentially, I was just kidding about that. I mean, that's really not it's a serious topic to have some kind of agreement to explore cyber security unit with Russia. Rubio actually said this.
Wait a second. I agree with you. It's a serious topic.
Oh, go ahead.
It's a serious topic, but liberals aren't taking it seriously. They're just looking for ways to exploit it, to make it look like President Trump is the fool to Vladimir Putin, because the media has an agenda. I mean, you and I have talked about this before. Let me ask you this, though. When we talk about the takeaways that liberals, or what liberals have taken away from the meeting between Trump and Putin, they've taken away the handshake, and they're criticizing his Twitter account. Nothing else is new. They always criticize what he says and what he tweets here. But let me ask you, what were the 3 main takeaways, your 3 main takeaways as a liberal from President Trump's speech in Poland?
Okay, the speech is very important, and I'm glad you brought it up. I just, to answer the previous question, it's hard to say that liberals are the ones making a big deal about it when 3 out of the 52 Republican senators made the kind of statements that you saw from Sass, Rubio, and Graham. But to the speech, I think that, look, the speech in Poland is an important speech. It lays out what you can argue is the most coherent statement of a Trump worldview, if you will. I think the argument that the West will survive is certainly a fairly straightforward one. I don't think there's anybody who has a real problem with that. The question is, how does he define the West? I think when you've got the West, to me, the West is defined by freedom, it's defined by democracy, it's defined by individual liberty, it's defined by a sense, as Thomas Jefferson so beautifully put it, that all men are created equal.
Right.
We saw some of that in Trump's speech, but we also saw some parts of that left out. I would argue that the West is more than the Christian faith that is held by the majority of Westerners, and that was something that was important in Trump's speech, although certainly Christianity or the Judeo-Christian tradition is an important part of Trump's speech.
The Judeo-Christian tradition is what this nation was founded on. That's not something that's exclusive to Trump or to Barack Obama or Bill Clinton or George Bush or, any of our presidents, truly. They've all espoused this Judeo-Christian value system that our nation is built on. But I think you exemplified my point. I mean, we're talking about important circumstances that happened in Europe at the G20 summit. We're talking about President Trump meeting with Vladimir Putin, and then we're talking about the speech. Liberals can articulate so clearly exactly what they had a problem with when it comes to Trump's relation with Putin, but they can't accurately articulate even 5 points from Trump's speech. They can't articulate anything other than, of course, everyone agrees with the defense of the West. Well, no, not everyone agrees with that. Not everyone goes across overseas and speaks proudly of our nation, proudly of individual liberty, proudly of freedom. President Obama didn't do that. The reason that liberals are talking about President Trump's handshake with Vladimir Putin instead of this speech is because it's a diversion. They don't want people to listen to President Trump's speech because everyone on the left and on the right, outside of the cesspool that is Washington, D.C. and our Congress, everyone agrees with what he says. Almost everyone agrees with that. Those are the fundamental values on which this nation was built. Our family values, our freedom, our autonomy, our security against evil. I mean, the fact that we are going to be a prosperous, enduring nation because we stand up for what is right. That's what President Trump said, and liberals don't want to articulate that because it's a threat to them.
Well, I would encourage you then to actually read my book, because in my book I outline what President Obama has said and the literally countless occasions in which he has talked about how proud he is of Western civilization, how proud he is of the United States, and how he will defend its values. And many of the things that you just said he doesn't say or hasn't said are exactly the things that he has said. It's just a question of whether you're going to set
not when he was bowing to foreign leaders.
Yes.
Not when he was apologizing to other countries for the destruction that has been caused by essentially American imperialism, although that's not a direct quote from him. The contrast is striking, Ian. And by the way, I would like a copy of your book, so to put you on the spot on air, if you send it to me, I promise I will read it. We are out of time for today, though. Thanks so much for being here.